When you love someone, you assume the best in them, even when things get tough. You hold on to hope, telling yourself, this is just a rough patch. We'll figure it out. That's exactly what I did. My name is Duke, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend my marriage was perfect. It wasn't. I had my own struggles. My business was failing, money was tight, and the weight of trying to keep everything together was suffocating. Cassandra and I weren't as close as we used to be. The connection that once felt effortless had been replaced by a quiet, creeping distance. I noticed it, sure, but I never imagined it was because of someone else. I thought we were just lost in the struggles of life, too tired and too overwhelmed to see each other clearly. So, I decided to do something about it. Our anniversary was coming up, and I figured we needed a moment, something to bring us back to where we started. I planned a special dinner, a night that would remind us of why we fell in love in the first place. I wanted her to feel cherished again, to know that even though life had been hard, I was still here, still fighting for us. What I didn't know was that Cassandra had already found her happiness elsewhere. The night before our anniversary, we were at home, settling into our usual evening routine. I was on the couch, flipping through channels, while she was preparing to take a shower. As she walked toward the bathroom, towel draped over her shoulder, I casually asked, "What are we eating tonight?" She paused in the doorway, barely glancing over her shoulder. "Just use my phone and order our regular stuff," she said before disappearing into the bathroom. It was a simple moment, something that had happened 1,000 times before. But fate has a cruel way of playing with people. I picked up her phone, unlocked it, and that's when I saw it. A message notification appeared at the top of the screen. A single line that shattered my entire world. "Damn, babe. I'll miss you this weekend, but I get it, anniversary and all. Can't wait to see you next week." I stared at it. Read it once. Twice. My mind struggled to process the meaning. The words blurred, yet their message was painfully clear. My hands moved before I could think, tapping the message, opening the chat. And that's when I saw it all. The thread stretched back for months, filled with excitement, longing, and worst of all, intimacy. Every message was a dagger to my heart, carving away at the foundation of everything I believed in. She had told him she wouldn't be available over the weekend because of our anniversary. And him? He understood. He was patient. He was already making plans for their next rendezvous. My fingers trembled as I scrolled, but I couldn't stop. Each message I read took another piece of my heart and crushed it. The texts were more than just casual flirtation. They were passionate, raw, filled with things she had never even whispered to me. There were fantasies in those messages, desires she had never shared with me. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a slip-up or a moment of weakness. It was an entire secret life, carefully cultivated while she came home to our bed every night. A fire of anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed proof. Quickly, I took screenshots, every word, every image, every disgusting detail. Then, I transferred them to my own phone, securing the evidence before she could delete it. By the time I put her phone down, my pulse was still hammering in my ears. The truth was now mine to hold. But what I would do with it, I wasn't sure yet. Cassandra emerged from the bathroom, her skin glowing, her hair damp as she went through her usual night routine. She hummed softly, completely oblivious to the storm brewing just a few feet away. She had no idea. I could have confronted her right then and there. I could have screamed, demanded answers, broken something, anything to match the chaos inside me. But I didn't. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. I walked into the living room, grabbed the remote, and turned on the TV, trying to drown out the reality clawing at my mind. But no matter what played on the screen, I couldn't focus. I couldn't escape what I had just seen. When it was finally time for bed, I couldn't bring myself to lie next to her. The thought of feeling her warmth beside me, knowing what she had been doing behind my back, it made my stomach turn. So I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, lost in my thoughts. Some time later, assuming she had fallen asleep, I finally forced myself to stand. Slowly, I walked to the bedroom, dreading every step. As I climbed into bed, she rolled over toward me, her hand resting on my chest. Then, she lifted her head slightly and leaned in to kiss me good night. I pulled away, and before I knew it, the words slipped from my mouth. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Cassandra froze. Her lips hovered inches from mine, her sleepy eyes snapping open in an instant. Slowly, she pulled back. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice shaky, her expression carefully blank. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how predictable she was, how quickly she slipped into denial, as if she thought she could gaslight her way out of this. I didn't play along. Instead, I stood up, walked to my nightstand, picked up my phone, and opened the folder. Then, in the calmest voice I could muster, I started reading. Line by line. Word for word. Her own words. I barely got through the first few messages before she cracked. She lunged for my phone, desperate to grab it away. "Wait. Just let me explain," she cried, trying to snatch it from me. But I was faster. I pulled back, stepping away from the bed, keeping it out of her reach. She collapsed onto the mattress, sobbing, her hands covering her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out between ragged breaths. "It was a mistake, Duke. It was a moment of weakness." I said nothing. I was just tempted, that's all. I wanted to explore new things, but you were always busy, and I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I tilted my head, studying her. Then, in the same measured tone, I asked, "How do you feel knowing what you do with your mouth, and still coming home to kiss me with it?" She didn't answer. What could she say? She just sat there, frozen, shaking, her tears rolling down her face. And me? I didn't care anymore. Without another word, I turned around, grabbed my things, and walked out of the room, leaving her alone in the mess she had created. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't sleeping next to her ever again. I had a plan, but I never followed through. Instead, I just existed. I woke up, went to work, came home, and then did it all over again the next day. I moved through life on autopilot, barely speaking, barely eating, barely even thinking. I kept putting one foot in front of the other, not because I wanted to, but because stopping felt like it would require more effort than I had left to give. My life no longer felt like my own, and I was trapped in the routine of a marriage that had already crumbled in everything but name. Cassandra acted as if nothing had changed. She tried to force normalcy back into our lives, pretending as if her betrayal had never happened. She would ask about my day with the same practiced ease she once had, slipping in a soft smile here and there, hoping I would return it. She lingered near me, standing just a little too close, touching my arm when she spoke, subtle reminders that she was still there. At night, she slid into bed beside me, her body close enough to touch, but I never turned to face her. The space between us felt insurmountable, a vast ocean separating two strangers who once promised each other forever. I was present in body, but my mind, my heart, my soul, they had already left. When her casual attempts at reconciliation didn't work, she tried harder. One evening, I came home late and was met with the warm, inviting scent of my favorite meal. The kitchen was spotless, the table neatly set, the wine already poured. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her, eyes filled with fragile hope as she waited for me to say something, anything. But I didn't. I simply looked at the plate, then walked past it, heading straight to the bedroom without a word. That meal remained untouched. For the next week, she kept trying. She made my coffee just the way I liked it, left little notes on the counter, played our favorite songs in the background. I could feel the desperation creeping in, her silent pleas for me to acknowledge her, to talk, to react, to yell, anything but the deafening silence I continued to give her. But I had nothing left to say. The way I saw her had changed, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that our marriage was already over. One evening, after work, I asked her to join me in the living room. She hesitated for only a second before sitting down across from me. I didn't waste any time. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a stack of divorce papers and placed them on the table between us. She stared at them for a long time, her face unreadable, before finally looking up at me. Confusion flickered in her eyes, though we both knew she wasn't truly confused. "What is this?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. I met her gaze, my voice calm and steady. "Sign these, or I tell everyone about your affair." For a moment, I saw something in her expression. Shock, maybe even fear. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew that if I wanted to, I could ruin whatever respectable image she had left. Then, like clockwork, the tears came. Her shoulders shook as sobs racked her body, her hands trembling as she reached for the papers. I watched, unmoved, as she fell apart in front of me. I imagined she had never expected this. Perhaps she thought I would eventually forgive her, that I would let time smooth over the cracks in our marriage until things went back to the way they were. Maybe she believed I loved her too much to let go. But love couldn't erase betrayal, and this wasn't something I could forget. She picked up the pen, wiped her tear-streaked face, and signed her name. With every stroke of ink on paper, the life we had built together came to an end. There was no explosive argument, no final desperate plea, just the quiet death of something that was supposed to last a lifetime. Cassandra still had her job, her money. On the surface, she was fine. But what she had lost was so much greater. She lost a home, a husband who would have done anything for her, and the respect of everyone who would inevitably ask, "Why did your marriage end?" When that question came, I wondered, would she tell the truth? You'd think that once the divorce was finalized, that would be the end of it, that she would accept the consequences of her choices and move on. But Cassandra didn't want to let go. At first, the messages were subtle. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A meme she thought I'd find funny. A nostalgic text about something we once shared. I ignored them all. Then the messages grew longer. She told me she missed us, that she missed what we had. She missed the way I used to look at her, the way I held her, the way we could talk about anything. She said she was lonely now, that no one understood her the way I did. It was almost funny. Almost. Because the way she spoke, you'd think she was a widow mourning the death of a husband she had loved with all her heart. As if she hadn't been the one to drive a dagger through our marriage with her own hands. She wanted to pretend she was the victim. But I wasn't interested. Then one day, she sent a message that made me pause. "We don't have to remarry. We can just live together again." I stared at my phone, rereading those words over and over. I imagined her sitting somewhere, actually believing that I would be desperate enough to take her back. That I would be weak enough to let her crawl back into my life under any circumstances. So I sent her one final message, one that left no room for misinterpretation. "Go cohabit with your young lover." That was it. The final nail in the coffin. She didn't reply after that. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Some people throw away love for temporary pleasure. They risk everything, their home, their marriage, the person who would have stood by them no matter what, for a fleeting moment of excitement. And when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late. I moved on. I built something new for myself. And if you ever find yourself in my shoes, I hope you do the same. But let me ask you, what would you have done? Some of you might think I should have sought revenge, made her feel the same kind of betrayal she put me through. Trust me, in the moment, those thoughts crossed my mind. But in the end, I chose to walk away. No screaming. No begging. No second chances. What about you? If you discovered your partner had been living a double life, how would you handle it? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious to hear different perspectives. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who might be ignoring the signs, share this with them. They might need this story more than you think.